Everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's me and Nate back at it. We've both been traveling a little bit, world weary as always. Nate scouting out new places to live, and me getting a cold in Florida because I went to a place that is somehow even more ass backwards than Missouri. But don't worry, we're catching up. Nate, how are you doing today?
Good, man. Yeah, I would love to say I was scouting out places as if like there's a real roadmap so far, but we were just down there because Cynthia's job sort of requests that she comes down once per quarter. It seems that the head of the company is very into the idea of anyone who wants to moving to Geneva. He really likes having everyone be there. And apparently they've got a chokehold on the fucking sponsorships for getting the Canton of Geneva to sponsor people's immigration or to do that, because there's a quota every year. So good for us.
Do they need a random IT guy?
Probably not. But you know what, dude? I'll keep my eyes and ears open once I get there. I was realizing that like I'm looking into this to see if it's feasible in any way for me to sponsor Joe if he does decide he wants to move to the UK. But I don't think you guys would want to move to the UK.
No, I don't want to move. I don't want to go to the UK.
Joe has reasons for at least considering it, and that's not like there's absolutely no decision that's been made there. But he's talked about it potentially, and I was like, well, I do have my own limited company. I have been in business for a while. You have to apply for a license and pay some fees, but I don't know if a company of my size could even get away with it. I definitely think that Joe being like the main talent on his show and wanting to work together in person, that makes it a lot more compelling of an argument. But I'm also not a lawyer, and I don't handle UK immigration law, so I have no idea. But it was really funny because Joe and I were talking about that, and he was like, talking about you probably need to apply at a UK consulate or embassy. And he was like, yeah, well, I don't want to like hand over my American passport for processing, so I'll probably just apply on my Armenian passport. I'm like, no. Apply on your American passport. I'm sorry, dude. Like, not blowing up the spot. But I'm like, Joe, buddy, I'm really sorry, man, but like the UK, like the US, is an extremely racist country, and absolutely they judge based on the country from which you were applying for a visa, and you are far more likely to get one granted in a situation like this as an American citizen versus an Armenian citizen. So, yeah, so we'll see if that happens. But I mean, he has obviously there's reasons why he would consider doing that, and I don't know if he's going to or not. But for us, it's Cynthia's company, and so I'm kind of exploring options as far as what I can do down there to open my own business, because this is very funny in a way. If the UK hadn't left the European Union, then I could move down and I could literally start any business I wanted pretty much. I would basically have a visa that would last me long enough to just stay on one visa for 5 years and then get permanent residency. But since Britain left the EU, and Switzerland is not a member of the EU, but it has a negotiated treaty with the EU, and it's a member of the Schengen zone, the free movement zone. And so they can't negotiate a deal. According to my Swiss friend, they can't negotiate a deal with Britain even if they wanted to, because they would basically grant kind of backdoor access to Schengen, and the EU would get very angry with them. And the EU is their biggest trading partner. So basically, if we applied to go down there on American passports, I think I've talked about this before on the show, they've carved out an exemption, and it's 5 years to permanent residency if you're American or Canadian. If you are a Brit, it is like you were coming from any other country in the world besides the EU or the European Economic Area or North America. Basically, it's insanely strict, it's insanely restrictive, tons of quotas, and you have to wait 10 years before you can apply for permanent residency. So if we applied on our British passport, Cynthia would have to basically have her employer sponsor her continuously, never lose the job, never change jobs or be between jobs for 10 years straight if we wanted to stay. And it's like, yeah, fuck that. Sorry. So the Brits went from basically being able to, like, for example, anywhere in Europe, but specifically, and we're talking about Switzerland, move down and basically not need a job. And as long as they live there legally for 5 years, they can apply for permanent residency. And as long as they like met the language requirements and never got in trouble with the law or claimed public assistance within like 3 years of applying. But now basically it's like their passport, it's extremely not helpful to apply down there. So I will be dependent on the largesse of my wife's employer, because I'm going to be just like she was leaning on me. I'm a British citizen, and so her immigration status here was based on me being a citizen. Now I'll be the kept husband, basically. And her job
that's the socialist future we all want, is to be the man who stays at home raising the baby.
but yeah, but it's been interesting. I was down there for 2 weeks or almost 2 weeks. Cynthia was there for work, and we mostly when I was in Geneva, I just like ran errands for her, did the laundry, got groceries, stuff like that, and took some time off. And then, but we did spend a weekend in the German part. We took the train to Interlaken. I mean, really, the train to Spitz and then the bus to Interlaken because the train line is out right now for maintenance. And so we got to go all the way up to Schilthorn, the mountain that was in the James Bond film on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So it's like all of the tourist attraction stuff around the top of Schilthorn and like the restaurant and everything is all James Bond themed, which is interesting since I do an anti-Bond podcast. But it was beautiful. It was honestly absolutely beautiful. It was so nice to get some time off with me and Cynthia. We were like, this is sort of like a baby moon as opposed to our 10 days in a hotel in London in February because our landlady was having maintenance done. And it did actually feel really nice. And so now I'm back. And then as soon as I got back on Thursday night, almost 2 weeks ago, and then I left that Sunday to go on tour with Trash Future. And so we played 3 nights in a row in Birmingham, Leeds, and Manchester, then drove back from Manchester, and then the next Sunday we flew up to Glasgow and played a 4th night in Glasgow, and then flew back on Monday. So I got back 2 days ago. It's really nice to have the tour done with, and weirdly, in Glasgow had about the nicest weather I'd seen all year, and it seems to have followed us down here because today was, I would argue, probably the nicest day we've had in 2023 in London. So ran some errands, rode my bike a bit to run errands around the neighborhood, and then went for a run. I just set my watch for like a 6 minutes 45 seconds per kilometer, like easy pace, and then just ran 20 minutes that way because I haven't run in a while. But dude, it's gorgeous out. It's such a mood improver when weather is nice. It's unreal.
Yeah, I've been trying to get back into a workout routine, but like this whole last month, like I was traveling for work, and then we went down to Florida for my wife's job. She had a travel agent thing down there. But man, I went to Vegas, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm 40 now, but like Las Vegas has really like lost any kind of luster it has. It's just like the weed is expensive, the beer is expensive, everybody is like, it's just hot and weird and gross, and everybody is just chain smoking and playing slots, but like not in a cool way, but in a sad way. So I don't know, like Vegas has like I said, I think it's just because I'm middle aged, and I'm just like, well,
you're literally having the real life version of that whole episode in King of the Hill where Bobby gets caught smoking, and that winds up leading down this path of like both them, like Hank forcing Bobby to smoke a bunch of cigarettes, and then Bobby just basically getting sick, but then getting addicted, but also Hank and Peggy kind of like getting really tempted to fall back into smoking because they were both ex-smokers, and then going to like the bar, club, etc. they used to hang out in, where they have all these like romantic notions of how cool and fun it was and liberating it was, and all the smoking and all the drinking and fun, and they go there, it's just like a bunch of sad, drunk, coughing old people.
Yes. That's all it is now. And yeah, every once in a while, like we went out to dinner with my wife's parents a couple days ago. And while we were leaving, we were walking back out to the car, and somebody like was smoking a cigarette probably about 20 or 30 feet away, and you catch that like wafting smell. And like after it was a good Mexican meal too. So after a really big food, and then just like, and smelling that cigarette, just like, fuck, I really want a cigarette right now. But also I know if I smoke a cigarette, I will probably throw up. So there is some of that, that sense memory that comes back, but also the knowledge that my body cannot actually do that anymore, and nor should I make it do that. Like going to Las Vegas, and I wasn't in like, I was on the Strip, which I guess is not the cool part of Las Vegas anymore. You have to go down to like Old Vegas, where all of the old stuff is. You got to take an Uber there or something. I didn't take the time out to do that, but I went. I made one of my coworkers go to the Gordon Ramsay Burger Bar with me. And that's the other thing, man. Everything there is just like, it's really expensive, but also kind of disappointing. Like it was fine. It's a burger place. It's fine. It's Gordon Ramsay, I guess. But yeah, it's just kind of lost a lot of the Well, I'd say this. The first time I went to Las Vegas properly was when I was, 31. So I never really had the time of all my really irresponsible drinking. I just did that in the dive bars that were near me during my 20s. So I don't know. So now Las Vegas is just very boring to me because I'm
going to be honest with you, dude. Las Vegas was always boring to me, and it probably would have been boring to you even in your 20s. I went on a 4-day pass when I was doing, basically, if you're an ROTC cadet, when you finish your summer camp you have to do between your 3rd and 4th year of the program, you can do a thing where you spend, I think it's like 6 weeks at a 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I can't remember. No, it couldn't be 6 weeks, but like 3 weeks at a regular Army unit. And I got a slot to go to what I thought would be, and it was fun, but what at the time was like, oh, that's so badass. I'll get to go to the 11th ACR at Fort Irwin, California, and get to see like what they do when they run OPFOR stuff.
Goes to fucking die.
Yeah, well, like, okay, when you spent 6-7 weeks in World War II barracks at Fort Lewis with zero privileges at all, Fort Irwin, and the fact that it has like fast food courts and a commissary, and you have time off, and you can drink, and you can get like, it has a class 6 store and a shopette. Like, it felt like paradise to me, and I had a really good time because I wound up at first being in the S2 shop, but it was really boring and they had nothing for me to do. And then I had mentioned just that I was, wasn't sure if I wanted to branch infantry or MI, and they put me with the scout platoon, and it was so fun. It was like no doctrinal training at all, but it was absolutely badass. Fun training, being OPFOR, going out and spending like days on hide sites, doing like these insane missions where we were harassing Blue 4. Like, it was so much fun. I've talked about it on this show a bunch. It was genuinely, we probably didn't give the units that good a training, and certainly for me, I didn't learn shit about, outside of the basic sense of what an Army unit is like, but I had an absolute blast. But anyway, like right before we got done with that program, we had a 4-day because we had just finished a whole NTC rotation. And me and a bunch of my cadet friends wanted to go. I wanted to go to San Diego, which I realize is boring, but San Diego at least has the beach and it has good weather. And if you're going to be fucking idiot college students, like, if you're going to be in a beach town that's familiar with jar-headed morons, San Diego works great. And I was like, dude, we should drive to San Diego. We go to the beach. We could fucking like have great food. We can go swimming, like meet girls, go to bars. It'll be really, really fun. But no, they wanted to go to Vegas, and Vegas is closer, admittedly much closer to Barstow than San Diego is. It's very funny in retrospect when I think about San Diego, probably like famous for being like the most right-wing city in Southern California, probably worse than Irvine, probably worse in aggregate than Orange County. Like, yeah, Jesus Christ. But we stayed in the Circus because it was the one we could afford, and it sucked. It was gross. Everything was gross. I didn't have a good time. I think for me, it was like, I enjoyed playing fucking blackjack, getting yelled at by the dealer because I kept fucking hitting and making the other players nervous. I enjoyed that you could smoke and drink.
I said you got to know how to play blackjack at a
that's
table.
The thing that's so fucking annoying about blackjack is that I was actually pretty good about playing blackjack online and winning because I don't care. Like, I just knew how to bet reasonably to not lose too much when I lost. But like, there is basically etiquette about it, about when you are supposed to, and like, I didn't know that. And the deal, he wasn't a dick. He just was like, yeah, don't do that. And I was like, okay, my bad. But it was one of those things where I was like, oh, this isn't anywhere near as fun in real life as like I thought it would be, because I just played it on fucking, I played blackjack on like extended Windows fucking built-in games when I was a kid. But I think the thing that I realized about Vegas was that like, I've had friends who've, from there, who partied there, who lived there for a while, etc. And there is plenty of stuff in Vegas. It's just that the Strip is absolute hell.
Yeah. And I don't want to put down Vegas itself. I've only been to the touristy, shitty part of Vegas. Yeah. I understand that. Vegas itself is full of wonderful people, just like every city is. It's got great stuff all over the place. It's got its ups and downs. I don't want to come across as insulting the entirety of Las Vegas. I'm just saying that when your corporate job is just like, hey, we need you to support something, you're gonna go to Las Vegas. It's not as exciting as
but I mean, I will say that like there are some things now that weren't as big then with casinos, and also I wouldn't really have known about, which is that there are obviously, like, depending on the kind of music you like, there are a lot of places where DJs, for example, do residencies. There are actually some decent clubs, and I've from friends know that there's definitely some off the strip stuff that's cool. It's just that I was with 3 other moron 21-year-olds and one random 19-year-old because he was a military academy, like not USMA, but like one of those other military academy students. So he couldn't drink in the bar with us or go to the casinos or the strip club. So
the first time I went to Las Vegas technically was when I was 19 as well, coming off of a 2-week in Fort Irwin, and we had gotten really shit faced the night before, just because it was the last day of the thing of training. We were sharing barracks with a bunch of dudes from the Virgin Islands, so they were just like, hell yeah, let's go get shit faced. They had a big cookout and everything. It was great. But we went to the other guys wanted to go to a strip club, and like it is 6:00 in the fucking morning, and they want to go to a Las Vegas strip club. Again, a bunch of jackasses. I think at the time they're all like in their 20s or so. I was 19, so I was just like, guys, you understand? I can't go into this place, right? Like I can't go to a strip club. I'm 19, and so they all kind of got that, just like, well, I mean, would it be cool if like? And I was like, fine, fucking go to your strip club. They did not have a good time, which good, fuck them. And I did not have a good time either in Las Vegas, but we did end up leaving, and that was nice. But next time I come into Las Vegas, I'm gonna have to go find. Actually, no, I know a couple people in Las Vegas. I should probably, spread my. I know people all over the place at this point, so I should, but. Get caught up with work and caught up with other things, and then just it's hot. God, Las Vegas is hot, so hot there. It's May and it's fucking hot. Fuck off, 90 degrees. Anyway, I went to Las Vegas and then came home for a bit, and then we went down to Orlando, which I always enjoy Orlando. I like this, like, despite the politics of Florida, despite how shitty DeSantis is and all of that, because I'm a Missouri boy, and Nate, because you are from Indiana, I do not write off entire states, because that's writing us off as well, right? So
yeah,
I hate that it's like the way it is, but I still do enjoy visiting Florida. However, because of climate change, we'll no longer be visiting Florida outside of winter, early spring years, because holy shit, it's just so hot everywhere now. But at least, my garlic is coming in, so I've got that going for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You're right. You don't want to write off entire states. And I think the thing, like, I've had friends who have, spoken very, very highly about like experiences they had and cool people they met in places that I, wouldn't think of as somewhere where I would expect that, like I have had friends who have had a really good time in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma. But to be honest with you, like, for example, the state of Indiana, it's home, but I don't really like going back because at this point, the only thing that is keeping me there or makes me go there is my parents, and they don't live in the town I grew up in, so it's not like I'm close. The only place that's close-ish is the town I went to school in for college. And I mean, I didn't have a miserable time there, but like I just don't care. I don't really feel like going back to Bloomington. I felt as though I explored every fucking square inch of Bloomington when I was between the ages of 18 and 22, and at this point, like, honestly, to be straight up with you, like, I kind of wish I fucking had friends in Louisville, because Louisville's a cool city compared to Bloomington, and honestly compared to Indianapolis. So like that's but yeah. So like I said, I also feel as though for me, for example, we were talking very, very tentatively for very far in the future about potentially what would we do if for Trash Future we tried to tour the U.S. But because of people's time requirements and stuff, we would be unlikely to do a long tour because we just don't have, like, Riley has a day job, Hussein has a day job, I'm married, Cynthia and I are having a kid. And so we looked at like maybe doing 4 dates, like sometime in the next year or 2 years, like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, hit the biggest cities and the places we have the biggest markets, and which sucks for people not in those areas, but like, I couldn't let us do a tour and not do the Midwest at least. Also, Chicago's a huge city. We have a lot of fans there.
Yeah, I'd come up for a Chicago show. Yeah, I mean,
it's. I was telling them, I was like, honestly, Chicago makes sense because people in the Midwest are used to driving to Chicago if there's an event they want to see. That's just a thing we all grow up with.
We're used to having to go to Chicago for the cool shit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I used to drive to Chicago to see bands all the time because they either didn't play in Indianapolis, or before I was 21, they only played the Vogue, and the Vogue was 21 and over. Like, you had to show ID and stuff. And so but I was like, should we consider trying to do a show in the South? And it's like, yeah, I mean, I thought about it, but also like, there isn't really a place in the South where we have a big enough fan base to warrant all of the logistics of it. and I really wouldn't want to. I mean, I just kind of wouldn't want to go. Obviously, like I wouldn't want Alice probably just wouldn't go. I imagining Alice having to go to fucking Texas or Florida. No,
Absolutely
like hell
not,
no. And also,
I don't think Alice should go to Chicago.
Really?
Actually no, I take that back. Illinois is pretty good. We've actually been talking about moving to Illinois.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that when I get done off this point about like what your thoughts were on that, because I know you're like such a like St. Louis boy, but at the same time it's like it seems like
we've been like there's some chucklefuck that tried to put in a woman getting an abortion can be charged with a felony bill through Missouri. And that was when my wife and I were just like, Alton, Illinois is really nice, and it's right across the river.
Yeah.
And it is. You can get houses for fairly inexpensively there. You can get a good house for $150,000-$200,000. It's still right on the river. That just as we like it. It doesn't have all the amenities and all the things that we would want, that we have currently. But like at the same time, my daughter's almost 8. She's going to be, in puberty years soon, and I don't see Missouri getting any better in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Like the climbing of it getting better is going to be a generational thing at this point. So we have absolutely been kicking around the idea and going over to Alton and seeing what they have. But like also at the same time, it's like, well, the housing market is not as great as it used to be. So selling a house isn't as easy. And Jesus fucking Christ, man, I've sold houses in such a pain. It's such a, like, we got a house in the market now and it's not moving. It's such a fucking pain in the ass. And I hate it. I don't want to ever do it again. But also I don't want to stay here in a place that's terrible. And, I want to go to Illinois, but then the question is like, well, what happens if Illinois gets, bad too?
Well, I mean, I think the thing with Illinois is that like, look, downstate Illinois is not that different from Indiana in a lot of ways, but Indiana doesn't have a Chicago. And as a result, like even with the Chicago suburbs being pretty right wing, Chicago in general just keeps Illinois. I mean, it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. And obviously, like you have, it's not like Illinois is famous for having great governors. Pritzker's doing quite well, but now. They do. They have a great one now. But let's not ignore the Rod Blagojevich years. And so, I mean, but at the same time, like Illinois is fundamentally a blue state because of Chicago, and unfortunately, Indianapolis just doesn't have the similar amount of heft. Mostly, Indianapolis in general is like not that left leaning of a state or of a city in general. I mean, it certainly is more so than the rest of Indiana, but and there are some shifts. I mean, like the county I'm from is shifting more towards the Democrats. It didn't go this time, but it's shifting in a way that seemed unthinkable 20 years ago. But yeah, like I think about this too. I mean, Cynthia and I, once we realized we were having a kid, it really changed the calculus about, where we'd want to live and, like whether we would consider moving back to America. And I think Cynthia really put her foot down because I wasn't saying I wanted to, but I just said that I would be amenable to moving back. And frankly, like there isn't really anywhere in America where you can get away from the big problems in America. And the place where I feel as though you can kind of pretend you've gotten away from them to some degree is New York, but New York is so impossibly expensive that it doesn't really, it's not really realistic.
New York has an insane mayor right now.
It does, yeah. But New York, here's the thing. New York City's mayors are always insane. They never go anywhere because like it's an office that attracts crazy people. And New York City and state politics are so corrupt that like it's the last time a New York State governor, for example, made it to be the president, I'm pretty sure was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The last time a New York City mayor made it to be president, I think was never. Or if it did happen, I'm not super good on this. It was probably in the 19th century because like it is not. Yeah. So you have to put up with a psychotic weirdo taking over, or at best, like, de Blasio like did one really good thing as a sort of left-wing mayor and then got so spooked by the cops he just didn't do his job ever again. But in a way, a mayor that does nothing can be a net positive in New York.
It really can be.
I'm looking at Alton, Illinois on Google Street View, and it honestly just reminds me of a small town in Indiana. And I gotta say,
one thing that we love about Alton is Alton is like the most haunted city in the Midwest. So they claim. And my wife and I used to go over there all the time to do ghost tours. Not that we believe in ghosts, but we are big fans of what we call ghosts of commerce, which is the hey, this place is haunted. Give me $10 and you can come and take pictures of my haunted place.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this place called the Mineral Springs Hotel, that had like they basically pumped mineral water into it, and it was one of those like back in the day you could stay there and then you go bathe in the healing waters of the whatever and feel better and all that shit. So now that that whole building, so it had ghost tours in it. It still kind of does. There are pictures of me in the underground, the pool that they have in the basement. It is, drained of water, obviously, but you can get down in there. And then, like, on the tour, they handed out those little copper dowsing rods, so you could like walk around and let it point towards ghosts or something like that. It was fucking ridiculous, but loved it. Loved every minute of it. Love how ridiculous it is. That whole building now, like the entire front of it is all like hippie head shops, but like not like the full on like a whole bunch of like every kind of tarot card deck you could want. And then there's just crystals everywhere, and there's pride flags and trans flags all over the place. And then a little bit further down the street there's this independent toy store that is run by a young couple that has all kinds of really cool like board games and stuff, but it's also got like it's not like a Toys R Us where it's just crammed full of like Legos and plastic bullshit that makes noise. It's like got, I don't want to say educational, like edutainment, but fun games and games that are not loud and obnoxious and things like that. And also, Alton is home of the Alton Giant, Robert Wadlow, who was the tallest man in the world.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Alton has a lot of history. It's also got something called the Piasaw bird, which is it's a Native American, like this weird griffin bird thing, Piasa. It's pronounced Piasaw, and is carved into the side of a cliff face that's there because Alton is basically built into a bluff area, and so they've got that and everything in Alton. Like if you start a business there, it's called the Piasaw whatever, just because that's like what is around in that area. And it's got charm. I'm sure it's got its problems. If you're a person who lives in Alton and listens to the show, let me know. I'd love to pick your brain about things, but it seems like one of those places that's like big enough that it's got all the amenities that you'd want, but small enough that it's not like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like overburdened. Like St. Louis is like just being in a big city at this point just feels really like I can't like my neighborhood is leaking all over the place. I walk my dog around, and I can think of at least 3 or 4 places where water is just leaking up out of the ground onto the streets. One of them is where a tree fell during a storm. The city came and cut the tree down. Whatever pipe underneath it has been broken since. The side street that's directly next to me has had to be cut into and dug up twice so far to get it to stop leaking. And all they did was move the leak further down the street. There's alleyways that have leaks. Just water just leaks. Water is just here. It's like it hasn't rained in 5 days, but yet there is a slow trickle of water here. And I feel like that's probably just a St. Louis issue, but I know that infrastructure everywhere is just kind of on the decline. And like at this point, I don't like it feels like shuffling, shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic at this point. But like at least when the collapse comes, I don't know if I want to be in this city. I don't know if I want to be in a big city or whatever, because like I see what's happening here. I see that St. Louis is hemorrhaging people. People don't want to live here because it sucks. And the more people leave, the less, money there is, the less revenue, the less taxes there are to do anything about it. And I don't know, man. It's just it's wild to watch. And it's crazy to be in the middle of it. And I'm kind of tired of being in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big reasons why we're looking at moving over, moving somewhere else. And I don't want to. I like my house. Like I just fucking built a new kitchen, man. Like I just built a kitchen the exact way that I want a kitchen. I have an office in the back, not exactly how I want it. I would redesign it a little bit better, but I have what I want. We put so much into this house, and then to just be like, we have to leave because the government might want to come and take her child for being trans, and then I'd have to shoot somebody, and then I go to jail. I don't want to do any of that shit. So I'm just going to go move to Illinois, where hopefully they don't do that shit. And look, maybe I'll have to bury my guns in the backyard and not tell them about it, but at least I'm in a place where I don't feel like I'm going to need them. So,
yeah, I mean,
I don't know. That's
it
where
makes
I'm
sense,
at with
man. I mean, that's so like obviously. I don't know if this came through in me talking about personal life stuff, because I think that especially when we first started the show, we talked a little bit. We talked about our military experiences, but we didn't talk as much about sort of personal things. And like, you know, obviously for me, I think watching in 2016 the combination of Trump winning and then just like a personal thing with I wrote a little bit about, you know, sort of guns in American culture, and I didn't write that many pieces, but I wrote one in particular that got a lot of traction and drove this pretty significant freak out of like right-wing people and a lot of right-wing veterans, and also just a lot of veterans people that I was in the military with. It's kind of like the thing that really made me stop giving as much of a fuck about being a veteran in any way. Certainly not thinking that, you know, veteran was some kind of category that was beyond politics, because it's just basically default right-wing, and it changed a lot of my opinions about like what that kind of engagement would be, and whether or not I really wanted to care. And then obviously like moving to a new country, you know, changed that too, because I'm not a veteran of the British Armed Forces, so like I'm not really a veteran here, so that's kind of nice actually. But I basically made up my mind when Trump won that we needed to leave. And not that I thought that, like, I mean, I definitely think there were times when I catastrophized like anybody else on social media, but I think that I could see that what the damage that would be done would be so great, and the sort of Pandora's box of it, you'd never put the stuff back in. And Cynthia made the point too, that she said, you know, the reason, like, even if we don't leave overnight, we don't have to like leave our stuff and get on a plane, but the reason why you want to leave is because at the end of it, like, as this stuff gets worse, you're probably not going to be the only one leaving. And so if you can establish yourself somewhere else in that time when like it does still feel kind of normal, then, you know, then you're in a better situation versus like waiting until it becomes so bad, and then like you don't know what the circumstances are going to be, you don't know what your life circumstances are going to be, you're not going to know if like you're in a position to move quickly. Like if we had, at the time we were talking this, you know, 6-7 years ago, it was like if we have kids, like moving with kids is much harder, all this stuff. And so we just made up our minds to move here. And then, you know, I think the combination of this country's sort of terminal decline and, to put it mildly, the absolute fucking just complete failure of all political leadership in this country to address and correct any problem at all, instead of just basically trying to dox anyone who points out that things might be kind of bad and humiliate them into silence. You know, all that made me realize that like Britain's got a ton of problems, and it's not really where I'd want to have a future. But if stuff intervened and we had to stay in Britain, like I think given the current situation and the fact that we are having a kid, I think we would stay here versus going home, which sucks because I mean, like, I miss home, and I'll never be British, and I'll certainly never fucking think this stuff is normal. But I don't know, man, like, you know, in 3 months I'm gonna have a daughter, and like I don't want her to have to do fucking active shooter drills, you know, like
no,
I don't want to have to worry about any of this stuff. And
that is a huge reason why we homeschool. And, you know, I end up having this fucking fight all the time. People is like, oh, well, homeschool kids, they're badly socialized. They don't know how to talk. Like, fucking, have you been to school? Like, nobody there knows how to socialize. Like, my child will talk your fucking ear off about anything. She knows how to talk.
Also, like, all kids until a certain age, like, are just weird as hell. Like, they get socialized into being less weird, but like at a really young age, like no matter what school you're in, all kids are weird because like they're just goofy. Like,
because she's 7. Her brain is 7 years old. She doesn't fucking understand. She's incredibly smart, and she has incredible like emotional language and ability to say what's going on. But like, still, she's 7. And like, I don't want her to, like, my wife didn't have very good time in school herself because my wife is on the spectrum, and she's like, I didn't understand that when I was a kid, and she got bullied all the time to a point where they had to move schools at one point. And I just like, it's the fucking American school system is just, it's a meat grinder, man. Like, even when we went through, and I want to believe that it's great and wonderful, and I want to, be, and I am all about public schooling and everything. It doesn't, I don't think it's going to work for us. Even if public school was great and wonderful and everything was worked as it should, we would still probably homeschool. But yeah, also like you said, man, I don't want my kid to go through like, okay, here's what you have to do if a man comes in here with a gun and just starts shooting everybody. And this isn't like we need to ban assault rifles. That ain't going to do shit. But you got to think about that, man. Like 7-year-olds got to learn, like they want to do like stop the bleed training in case your friend gets gunned down with the fucking gun in school. I don't know. And I, again, this is not to be insulting. I don't ever think that I'm trying to insult, but I don't understand how you send your kids to school, like with everything that's happening, like, and are not like, I understand you have to, like a lot of people have to. We are very lucky that I and my wife both work from home. My wife's schedule is very flexible. My corporate day job is fairly flexible as well. We are incredibly lucky. We sit in a place of privilege that I understand not everybody has. And it's from that place of privilege that I can say, I don't understand how you guys do that, especially when there was a school shooting in a school that I pass by on a regular basis here, like a couple of months ago. And it's just like, I don't understand what we're doing. And I don't want to be a part of it, like I'm kind of checked out from it at this point. It's like, whatever you guys have going on over there, you go ahead and keep doing it. I'm going to just stay over here. My kid knows how to do math. She reads, at a better level than I was at her age. She's doing fine. She has friends. She loves to talk to people. It's fine. I don't need to go through all of that. And I understand, again, that's probably a lot of doom and gloom and stuff, but like, I also like, I see what happens. I watch the news, and like you're about to become a dad. So now you're seeing it too. Like,
right. And I think that, I've been kind of checked out lately because I've stopped using Twitter, and I realized that was my primary source of getting news at all. And so I need to like find a different avenue reading the news in a way that, doesn't drive me insane because it sucks or misinform me, but also doesn't absorb all my day. I don't know. Like I do check my Twitter and I check DMs and things like that, but unfortunately, like it just sucks now. Like I just don't care. And I think also like as it's becoming more and more real that we are about to have a child, that I don't want to I still waste time every day because I'm not like a perfect, efficient machine, but I want to waste less time on stuff like that where, it kind of ruins my mood and makes me angry. If I'm going to waste time, I should waste time like fucking, I don't know, texting friends about bullshit or playing stupid games like fucking AoE4 or Cities Skylines. Like that's the thing, right? And so at the end of it, I think I haven't seen as much as, for example, Cynthia, who always was better about regulating her social media usage and not going down rabbit holes. And as a result, she's able to use it to keep up with the news, among other things. And, and so she's not as out of the loop about some of the big trending things that have happened in America. And she happened to be browsing Twitter when that school shooting happened at the Outlet Mall in Texas. And she saw the video of like the dead kid. And it really, really disturbed her. And I think it hit differently now that, I mean, it's like, I felt the baby kick. It's insane, but like, it's nothing like having the fucking child growing inside you, like where you're aware of it all the time. And like, I think it really is she told me that it just really like reinforced that she just doesn't want to go back. And like, which is tough because, like neither of us has I mean, like I have a pretty good relationship with my parents, but like my extended family were all military. And so all my cousins were always scattered to the four winds because their dads were in the military also. And then when their dads got out of the military, they didn't settle anywhere near where we lived. I had one set of cousins who wound up in suburban Virginia, like right outside of DC, and another set who wound up in like Hendersonville, North Carolina, really close, like really far western North Carolina, like almost near Asheville, actually like right by Asheville, where my grandparents lived. And so like I saw them at Thanksgiving every couple of years, but that was it. I never grew up with like aunts and uncles around. I never grew up with cousins around. And then obviously until I was almost 12, we moved like at a minimum every 3 years and often more frequently than that. So my only family is, my immediate nuclear family. And I mean, my parents live in Southern Indiana and my brother lives in Seattle. So I don't have, there's nowhere that I could move to be close to family where they're going to be able to help out. You know what I mean? Like at all. And same with Cynthia's family, like where they live in New England and in the South, like there's nowhere that we'd want to live where like it would be reasonable, where there would be like an advantage of moving home in that regard. And so, like, I'm not moving to fucking Bedford. I'm not going to move to Louisville. Like, it just sucks. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there just isn't, I mean, I'm not casting aspersions about Kentucky or Louisville beyond what people who are from Kentucky know is fair. But it's just, what I'm saying it sucks that there isn't really an option, but there just isn't. Like, I'll take my chances with having to put up with doing childcare ourselves and managing it, either in London and then hopefully subsequently next year in Geneva versus dealing with all of the fucking problems that would come along with it. And like, I recognize it's insanely privilege on my part. I got this chance solely because of fucking birth lottery. My mom was a GI baby. Her mom was English. Her dad was American. She was born here. She had a British birth certificate. They happened to change the law under Thatcher, mostly to fucking get rid of birthright citizenship and find new ways to deport people. But one of the things they changed while changing the nationality law here in the early 80s was to change it so that it wasn't just men who could pass down citizenship, because that used to be the rule. It could also be women. And so if your parent was a British citizen, regardless of sex, if they were a British citizen and you were born after January 1st, 1983, you were automatically a British citizen, and all you had to do was register as a British citizen, basically get a passport. You didn't actually registering as a British citizen is a more complicated process, takes way more time and money, involves doing a consular interview. Whereas for me, so my brother, who was born in 82, he'd have to jump through a million hoops and pay thousands of pounds to get a British passport. Whereas for me, because I was born in 84, I literally just put in an application and I got a passport in the mail. And so because of that, in 2015, this dumb lark that I had in 2015 of like, I think I'm eligible for a British passport. I got one. It says British citizen on it. And it always made sense that if we wanted to have kids, I can't pass down British citizenship because I was born abroad, because of the way they changed the law. So if we had kids, they'd have to be born here, or Cynthia has to naturalize as a British citizen and then she can pass it down to one generation. So we decided to come here. It was the easiest option. That's really it. They speak English. I have citizenship. I could sponsor her. It's easier for her to find jobs in a place in her field where they speak English. And a lot of her work experience was in Europe. And, and so that's how it wound up happening. And like, it's an incredibly fortunate position that we're in. And quite frankly, like, even though there's tons and tons and tons of problems in this country, and it drives me nuts how much like demonstrably worse it's gotten since we moved here in 2018, it's also gotten worse in America.
Yeah, you won't get shot.
No, you won't get shot. And it's like, I had to kind of check out of a lot of the fucking stuff about like the sort of like left-wing pro-guns argument, because it's just like, I'm just going to say this like in the terms that I can say where I'm not going to get tons of people mad at me, and also I'm not going to get us in trouble like making actionable threats. It's more like there's an argument to be made that's almost indistinguishable, it seems to me, from the people who are like, I need an AR-15 in case the government tries to, be tyrannical towards me, like that, whatever the fucking right-wing dipshit who was like, oh, there was this little boy in Britain and the NHS wouldn't let him potentially get this treatment in Italy. So he's like, if that happened to my kid, I would basically do 9/11. I would take my AR-15 and hijack planes. There's an argument I hear people making about, like, we need this to fight against the fascist, predatory white imperialist state. And I agree with that. But people, I don't necessarily think that you can look at the status quo in America and say, all of this is worth it. Nothing can change because we might need to fucking shoot some Klan members. Like, right, you're correct, but the current situation is so intolerable, and it just feels as though like we've known this for a decade plus, and we also know that there's no such thing as an event so horrible that it will change people's minds. They killed a bunch of little upper middle class white kids in Connecticut. Didn't change, and no one in Congress in the government will do anything. They killed a bunch of fucking white country music fans in Las Vegas. Didn't matter. It just doesn't matter. People, there's this dogmatic fanatical, fully, in my opinion, like fascist white supremacist notion of like what guns represent, and this idea that like that the Chuds have that they think they live in a war zone and they need to be armed like they're in a war zone. And don't come here and fucking try to blow smoke up my ass with something, oh, actually an AR-15 isn't the same thing as an M4. Because like functionally the way we use it in combat is the exact same fucking way that you use an AR-15. Yes, an M4 has fucking selective fire, it has burst mode. That's such a minuscule difference. Almost no one ever uses burst mode. You only I've trained on it because I was in a fucking paratrooper unit, but like we barely use it ever. Like when you fire an AR-15 in single shot mode, which you can do because it's legal to buy one, you are firing the exact same weapon that fucking troops carry in all combat zones where the U.S. sends troops to fucking fight and enforce horrible shit. And quite frankly,
you want to know something really fucking stupid?
What?
Before I got out, we got our hands on the new M4A1s, and they are full auto.
Yeah. When I was in the Q course, we were doing some marksmanship training, and they gave us full auto ones, just like on a range at one point.
What the fuck am I going to do with this, man? It's an M4.
I'm sure there's some commando shit you can do with them, but like, in terms of regular soldiers, you give a fucking full auto weapon to them, and all they're going to do is freak out and burn up mags nonstop, and then have no ammo.
I feel like selective fire is just to make troops feel special.
Yeah, I genuinely, I mean, like the way that I think I've talked about this, maybe I talked about it online, maybe I've talked about it on the show, but the way that we would employ selective fire in training, and the way we would use it is that, for example, if you were doing an ambush and you were initiating, you typically, the way that it works doctrinally is that when you are doing an ambush, you want to initiate with your largest, like your most casualty producing weapon. So the first thing that you fire off when you're ambushing enemy is the most casualty producing weapon. And obviously that's in the doctrine, that's a Claymore mine, but could also be an M240 Bravo or an M249, depending on what you have. M203 launch a grenade into I can't remember the diameter of the grenades in I think it's a 40 millimeter, but I can't quite remember, for a 203, so I don't want to sound like too much of an idiot. But like you initiate with that weapon. But one way that you can initiate if you don't have that shit on hand because you're doing a really hasty ambush is you just all the way up and down the line, you make sure that all the soldiers know that they are going to hear a 3-round burst, and that's what you're going to engage with. Another one is when you're doing night fire things, when you're using lasers, is that you might say, hey, like, we're going to put our lasers on this target, and then I'm going to initiate with a 3-round burst. When you hear that burst, that's when everyone fires on this target. Stuff like that. So there are control measures you can use it for. But in terms of like regular, the way that you train marksmanship, the way you employ those rifles, you basically only ever use single shot. You train on single shot. All the weapons discipline is about single shot. Like, everything about it. And so like gunfucker arguments notwithstanding, like the idea that there's anything significantly different about well, I mean, yes, there is. A lot of them are like super high sex versions of the AR-15, and they're probably better made and more reliable than the ones that fucking troops carry. And obviously a bunch of states have found ways to make it legal for people to carry high capacity mags that don't jam like nobody's business. And so like guys are doing these mass shootings with 100-round mags or with bump stocks, and basically that can sort of like it's sort of like doing the stranger when you jack off to give yourself full auto. Like it's not quite full auto, but it's sort of an ersatz almost as good thing. So like that whole argument is just, like I said, it's to me it's psychotic. And to me, if you know that weapon, I'm not like a gun fucker. I don't know shit about guns outside of like the handguns my dad owns that I've shot at ranges and all the weapons we shot in the Army. Both like, I never fired around in combat. I just wasn't in a position to, but I trained like nobody's business before we went, and then in other units. And so like, yeah, like I know those weapons really well. And the AR-15/M4, because quite frankly, they're almost the exact same, is the weapon that I know the absolute best. And like, so the idea that there's like, oh, it's not the same thing as the fuck. I'm like, no, dude, it's designed to fucking kill people on a battlefield. It's designed to fucking, it's designed to have huge amounts of stopping power, huge amounts of penetration, really fuck up your organs. Like it's a weapon that infantrymen carry to kill infantrymen in combat. Like that's what it's there for. Like, and so I just get so fucking frustrated with this shit. And this is a long tangent, and like we try to avoid this subject because it's so fucking divisive and so on and so forth. But like, and I can't pretend that I don't sometimes feel heartened, like just in the sense of when there's like an insane chud thing happening. Like I do, I'm not saying that I disapprove of like the John Brown Gun Club guys showing up with guns to scare off the chuds, but at the same time, it's like that doesn't necessarily make me very fucking hopeful about America.
No,
you know what I mean? Like, and also like John Brown hacked people up with a sword, so like at the same time, he's like he had all the right fucking principles. Don't get me wrong, but like it's a story where I would just strongly recommend reading about John Brown just so you understand the iconography, why he's so famous, but also that like the man was the polite way of saying this was extremely intense.
Yeah. Just like people who love to post pictures of General Sherman. It's like, he did other things that weren't so great.
Yeah, there's that. And
it's good to not have heroes, is what we're saying.
Right. And I definitely would say it's especially good to not have heroes who were alive in the 19th century, unless they were like, there are certain abolitionists and, people who fought in, like, I don't know, like Toussaint Louverture, but then like people get mad about the fact that they killed the white Haitian colonists. So, it's one of those things where
the only heroes you should have are the two that are on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely don't meet your heroes, because you discover how frail and weak and fallible we are. But I guess that's the thing, man.
I hear the weird clicking that's in my shoulder.
I guess I just bring all this up, and I know it's kind of a little bit of a rant on my part, but all of this stuff, I'm not saying this to be like, oh, and here's my solution. Here's why you should call your congressman, who definitely doesn't take money from X gun manufacturer, and why they should support. No, like, fuck that. I am almost 40 years old, and I have been paying attention to the news in some capacity since I was probably about 9. And I have been cognizant of this stuff since the first big school shootings happened in America. I know there were some like in the 80s, but the really big ones obviously were like the one in Mississippi, the one in West Paducah, Kentucky. And then there are a few others in like 96, 97, 98. And then obviously Columbine happened when I was in 8th grade in 1999. And then I watched the rhetoric get so much more intense and the body counts go up, as when the Brady Bill expired and AR-15s became, the weapon of choice for mass killings. And you see this stuff just get worse and worse and worse. And like, not only is it more deadly because of the frequency and because of the casualty counts with these weapons, but the rhetoric around it gets worse. It feels like with every one that happens, diehards get even more fixated on the idea that like the only solution is more guns, and the only solution is, nothing can change. This is God's will, basically, that this is just how life is, and anybody else who lives anywhere where this doesn't happen is, a communist or a pussy or a liar or like I've never seen left-wing pro-gun people like hate on people in countries with strict laws, except for the fact that like the argument's made of like, well, yeah, but they're basically, racist border regimes, which like, yes, they are, but also so is America. I guess it's just one of those things where seeing that it hasn't gotten better, seeing that it's actually getting very much worse, and the rhetoric and the sort of like, I don't know, the intensification of politics around like being eliminationist has gotten so much worse that I just don't really. I hope, God willing, that our daughter, is born healthy and everything's fine, and all that Cynthia's fine too, and everything's great, but that she gets to grow up where if she wants to be American and engage with America and all its bullshit, she can, but she also has the option to just not give a fuck about America and not have to be subject to it. And that's really crazy, but it's really crazy to say that as an American who like, I only feel more American the longer I live outside of the country. But that's where I'm at. That's where she and I are both at about how we want to live in the future. Like, the reason why we didn't jet down to Switzerland as quickly as we could when we had the option was because we wanted to stay long enough for Cynthia to have a passport and for the baby to have a British passport, so that like in the event of Switzerland not working out, that we didn't have to restart the insanely long and expensive immigration process in the UK again. Like we wanted to have options, have a backup. And like, I recognize how fortunate we are. But at the same time, it's like, if you just missed the fucking Titanic, you probably felt a little bit guilty about missing the Titanic, but also you're like, well, God, I'm fucking glad I'm not on the Titanic. 5 weeks later when the news got to you, because it was all like carried by like fucking semaphore flags or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, I'm just really glad. Like, I'm sure I was really annoying to Cynthia about like, we got to leave, we got to go, we got to leave, we got to go. But like, kind of glad I did.
You were right. So
that's really unfortunate. And I wish that weren't the case. I wish that I had just been hysterical and paranoid and overreacting, but that's not what it feels like, unfortunately. And so, yeah, we're going to raise our daughter to be a weird little Swiss kid. She's gonna think Switzerland is normal, but I mean, Switzerland is really cool. It's a weird country.
There's a lot of trains and mountains and chocolate there.
I'm
sure she'll be fine.
Of cool stuff to do as a kid too. So yeah.
Well, Nate, we're kind of at time. Did you have a hey dad?
Yeah, you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't have the email pulled up, but if you just give me one quick second,
sure.
I will pull up the Google Sheet, because that's one of the cool things about what's it called? The way that we've done this is we had people fill out a Google form, people who were patrons of the show, and the form what's it called? Let me basically generate a thing I can keep track of whether or not we are actually answering the same question as, the same time over and over again, because we have dad brain and we forget stuff, or if we've actually kept up with it. So, I am, of course, a former Army officer. I have to make a fucking tracker, a spreadsheet, a horse blanket for everything. So this is a question that I feel as though is very, very relevant to me. And I don't know about you. Actually, probably more so to you, because your parents were older when you were born than mine were. This question is, how do you deal with your parents aging? My parents are only in their mid-50s, but I can see the writing on the wall that one or both of them will need care, and I can barely take care of myself.
My advice is to have a more responsible older brother. But
that would be fucking nice.
If you don't happen to have that, yeah, my parents are in their 80s at this point, and they're still they still take care of themselves. My grandparents, both of them, or all sets of them, were all very independent up until they died. My grandfather on my dad's side lived to be the age of 93. My father is probably going to see 100 pretty easily. He's very active. He's volunteers. He gardens. He's a guy that he doesn't sit. I think that's a big part of it, is to make sure that keep them active, keep your parents active, keep them up and moving. That'll keep them out of the home a little bit longer. But as they I don't know, it is a worrying thing. I do think about those things, because if my dad passed, my mom would probably help my mom to go live with one of us. If my mom passed, dad would probably stay by himself, independent. And yeah, it is daunting, but also it's not it's weird. America, the way we do shit is already weird. The whole you're 18, get the fuck out of the house thing is a very strange way that we approach the family dynamic of go away, I'm done raising you, go fuck off and go do something else. In other cultures, you have multiple generations living together and they all kind of take care of each other. And I know that's not always, the thing that you can do, but I feel like that is something that perhaps you should kind of think about things on that, and also talk to your parents, talk to them and be like, look, you're talking about them in their 50s. My parents have a death book. They've shown me they're you have a baby book. They have a death book. We know when they die, they want their bodies donated to science. They have wills, they have their life insurance, they have everything, outlined and everything. And ask them, what do you want to do in case of care problems? Do you, say you have a stroke and you're unable to move below your waist or below your neck. What do we do in those situations? I understand that it's very scary to talk about those things, because it's a hard thing to try to think about. But if you don't, you're scared because you don't know. And if you don't know, the best way to not be scared is to learn about it, to talk to your parents, to say, hey, what do you want to do in these scenarios? What do we do in these instances? My wife and I have had the conversation of, if the both of us die, where does Lily go? And we have a list going down, okay, my brother would take her, or maybe her parents or her sister or my, but you have to have those things sorted out, and it doesn't make the future less daunting, but it does at least give you a little bit of a peace of mind. And it does that you say, okay, look, there's a plan in place for most of the things that could happen. Maybe something out of the ordinary could happen. Like I said, the stroke could happen and my father could be a drooling mess in a bed. I don't know what we do in that situation. I don't really think that that's going to happen. Strokes don't run in our family. He's very healthy. He's active. It's probably not going to be the thing. I'm more worried about him dying in a car accident or, a heart attack or something like that. So my advice after all this babbling is talk to them. Most of the things you're afraid of can be taken care of with conversations. If you ever came to me, it's like, my wife and I, we're having problems with blah, blah, blah. Fucking talk about it. Talk about it. Nate, what do you got?
I mean, so my parents are both turning 70 this year. My dad has Parkinson's and he has some dementia. They didn't really catch that it was Parkinson's for a little while. And so I think the condition advanced. He's apparently on medication now that seems to be doing a lot to help him. And he's doing physical therapy. But he's fundamentally disabled at this point in the sense that, like, he can't drive and he's dependent on my mom. But they aren't really, like, it's a strange situation. And without getting into too much detail, it's difficult because many people, I'm sure, have dealt with this, when they come to the point in their lives where we are presently, where your parents still treat you like a little kid because you are their little kid, but you are the adult in the situation. And it's challenging. I think for me, I have spoken to them. I have a general power of attorney for the things regarding them as needed. I think that my mom's parents, she didn't really have much of a relationship with them, but her dad was a pretty serious drinker and a diabetic who wasn't very good at taking care of himself, and he still lived to be, I want to say, something like 65. And her mom recently died, and she would have been probably in her late 80s when she died, like mid to late 80s. So they lived a long time. My dad's dad basically did no exercise after he got out of the army. The only thing he did besides basically sit around and be a grump was twice he and my grandma did 3 years of Peace Corps. And so he lived in Botswana for 3 years and then lived in St. Lucia for 3 years. But he taught English, so he had to stand in front of a class and teach. But he did not exercise. He was in terrible health. He drank a lot, and he had a stroke and then lived about 9-10 years longer. So he died at the age of 90, but he had a pretty horrible quality of life, although living at home with my grandmother taking care of him. My grandmother's still alive. She is, I believe, 92. She lives in a care home in Bloomington or in Bedford near my parents. My dad moved her up there after my grandfather died. But, so I imagine that both my parents, come from families where people live a long time. And my parents, they aren't like teetotalers, but they don't drink. My dad can't drink at all anymore. And they're both very active. My dad still does lots of farm work and, does woodworking as best he can. My mom does a lot of farm work too. I mean, just in general, having to walk down and move the chicken tractor and feed the sheep and water the animals and stuff. She's probably getting 10,000 steps every day just doing that. So they do stay healthy. I think that I know that I'm just going to have to ask them, and I've already asked them what they want to do, and they just basically trust me to make the decisions. And it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't really matter because they're not super close with their families either. So really, it's just a decision of like what gets done and who handles it, and which is between me and my brother. And obviously, like I think they asked me to do this, so I'll just make the best decision I can when it happens. I told my mom that if my dad dies before she does, that if she wants that, like, I'm happy to do whatever I need to do to like get it so she can come and live with us in Switzerland. But also I think that, my brother and his wife are expecting kids too. So they, she would probably split time between there. I don't really know what the best is. If my mom passed before my dad, we'd have to find my dad a caretaker. But I am knowing my dad, he would not want to leave the farm, and we just have to find someone in some kind of medical care and medical assistant home care in Lawrence County who can help him, because he absolutely just wouldn't leave. There's no way. And this thing is, it's just, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't, like, at a certain point, like, I have to make a decision and that sucks. But like, in terms of respecting what he wants, like, well, I know what he wants and he's not going to listen to my opinion on stuff. So he never really has. So that's how it's going to be. And so, like, I'll do the best I can in that situation. So at least I know I have the legal authority to, and then that's basically it. So, I mean, I think if your parents are in their 50s, the biggest thing is just understand that the big thing is going to be proximity. And so that's not saying you have to like go move in with your parents or near them. But, when my grandfather died, or when my grandmother had a fall and broke her leg not long after my grandfather died, my dad was going down there very regularly to take care of my granddad's effects and decisions, and then also take care of his mom. And so he was driving from basically an hour north of Louisville to an hour south of Asheville, like every weekend. And that takes a lot out of a dude in his 60s. Like, so just understand that, whether you're in your 40s when it happens or you're in your 60s or 70s, like that is going to be a concern, is how close you are, because like things have to be handled, and you'll find that in your family that like you might be the responsible one. You might be the only one amongst, brothers, sisters, cousins, etc., who is able and willing to handle it. And so just understand that like it's not going to just be like how do I handle, like, for example, end of life care. There's like a lot of stuff that has to get decided. So just be prepared for that, and understand that like you're going to have to probably, if you don't live near them, travel a lot and spend time there, and it's going to disrupt your life a lot. And and you won't really know unless it's happened to you before, how your family members handle grief and what they can do and not do. I don't think Milo would mind me saying this, that even though he's the youngest by far, he's the one who wound up being the sort of like manager and coordinator of everything when both his parents passed, because his siblings just can't handle. Well, the only sibling of his who can handle it and could also do a similarly good job lives in America. So like she couldn't handle the day-to-day stuff when she has to take time off her job and fly back to England to help. So it was him, at age fucking God, the poor guy, like 26 and then 29, handling the deaths of both his parents. So like it sucks, but if you're the responsible one, like you're going to have to be that person.
Yeah. So, but yeah, talk it out with them. And also, Jesus, 50, I'm 40 years old, man. Don't start worrying about my death.
Yeah.
Or your parents.
Yeah, exactly. By the time that I qualify for actually would be in a position to get a Swiss passport, I'll be 50. So,
right.
Yeah.
And we'll have to be worrying about where do we bury Nate?
Where do we bury Nate? Well, you know what? I made the joke in my fucking stupid blue book thing in the army, and then had to correct it because I didn't want to like get in trouble when my unit reviewed them. But I originally had planned to say that if I died, I wanted to be cremated, and I wanted to have my ashes scattered, and I'm not making this up, in Lake Geneva, in this town of Montreux, within sight of the statue of Freddy Mercury that's there for some reason. And I went to Montreux a couple weeks ago, and I saw the statue of Freddy Mercury, and you know what? I'm still fine with it. Dump my ashes in fucking Lake. I had no connection to Switzerland at that point. I had never been to Switzerland other than like a layover in the Zurich airport when I was 5. I'm not even a big Queen fan. I just found it really funny there's a statue of Freddie Mercury like rocking out in this town in Switzerland. And so you know what? That's what. If I die, cremate me. I don't need to take up space in the fucking earth. Cremate me. I realize I don't believe that's. I don't know the laws around Jewish burial stuff. But you know what? Fucking break the laws. I don't care if it does break them. Bury me and fucking scatter my ashes in Montreux inside of Freddie Mercury. And quite frankly, at this point, with the way my life is going, it'll be like an hour's train ride from where I'm living. So. It'll be easy.
So we won't have to go very far.
And there's direct flights from New York and Boston and Washington D.C. to Geneva. So you know what? Makes your life easy.
Well, I'm gonna take a little scoop back to Indiana, just so that a little bit of you is back here in the States.
Oh. All right, cool. Yeah, there's probably going to be some law by that point that my ashes are too gay to be scattered in Indiana.
Just take a little tablespoon of Nate back to America with me.
For fuck's sake. Well,
thank you everybody for listening to whatever this was.
Whatever it was, and we will talk to you soon.